Hi, this is Ross Payton again with episode 12 of Role Playing Public Radio. Everything old is new again. Of course, with me is Tom.
Yeah, you got my name right. Good job.
Yeah, I've only...
Three letters of pain, I know.
Yes. Anyways, we're going to be talking about how to basically spice up old and existing games for players who are a bit jaded and have seen everything, been there, done that.
Who also know all the rules, all the stats. And...
Right, yeah, exactly. So, of course, we have a few bits of business to talk about first. We now have an official Gmail email address. So if you have any anecdotes, stories, comments, questions, feel free to send them to rpprpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll be sure to read them. Of course, up until now, you've had to send messages through MySpace or comment on site, which has been a little bit annoying, but we're finally up to date. We're also...
It's all about what the fans want.
Exactly, yes.
And we've received literally two comments about that saying that it'd be much easier if we had a Gmail account.
Yeah, something like that. Sure. Anyways, Tom, you of course had a very exciting event happen here.
Well, I mean, it happened back on March 10th. We got to the show now where I can actually mention it. I mentioned that Henry Rollins was coming to Springfield on, I think it was the show before last.
Right.
And went to the show. It was 3 hours of awesomeitude. I made that word up.
Okay.
But afterwards, even more exciting was I actually got to meet him after the show.
Right.
Doing his little meet and greet with the fans. And,
right. We'll have a photo of that up on the website.
Yeah, I have a very ridiculous photo with me and my friend Aaron. And
Aaron looks more ridiculous.
Yeah, he does. But basically the two of us with Henry Rollins and him suffering us quite well. But it's one of those, I actually thought, like, if I ever meet this guy, I have so many things I want to say to him.
Right.
And it was the stereotypical, I got to meet him and I couldn't say a damn word.
Wow.
And of course, Aaron, the guy you'll see in the photo, had the opposite reaction. He was talking 90 miles a minute to the point it was becoming gibberish.
Yeah, you have the curly hair, just so people know in the photograph.
I'm the tall guy in black.
Yeah, and Aaron is the not Henry Rollins.
You can easily tell who Henry Rollins is. He's the cool-looking guy.
He's the. Oh well. Yeah. I was trying to be nice, Tom, but if
just don't beat around the bush. I am not cool.
All right. And so you couldn't even tell him that you ripped off one of his ideas for the podcast.
No, that didn't come up, but I did. But we did finally manage to say a few words to him. And when my other friend who was with us took our picture, and we don't know what to do, and he actually said to us, "Oh, come on, guys, now is not the time to be shy," and just pulls us both in. And the thing is, I had no idea that Henry Rollins was not that big a person. I tower over him.
Well, you tower over most people. What are you, 6 foot?
About 6'4".
Yeah, 6'4". That's pretty good size, Tom.
But he pulled us in, and I have this. I don't know what my look says. What did it say to you?
Deer caught in the headlights.
Yeah, that's about exactly right, actually. And
okay.
Aaron has this really dork grin on his face.
I would call it a shit-eating grin,
and his head's resting slightly.
And he really needs to shave.
Yeah, he really. I don't know. He likes the whole just little hair bit right there. I think it looks ridiculous.
Yeah, it looks terrible. I mean, yeah, I feel bad whenever I have. Anyways, we're talking about shaving
hair. But the picture's up there. I met one of my heroes. In the meantime, my world is awesome.
Yeah, no, I felt kind of the same way when I saw DJ Shadow in Japan back in 2003.
Yeah, and the show was great because he was like, it wasn't a stadium. Like, I think that Ant's head, maybe Henry Rollins, he was like 20 feet away from me during the show.
Yeah. No, it's a great feeling to see someone you really admire their work up close and personal. Last year I saw DJ Crush in DC, and we were like right next to the stage, and of course the massive sound system, and just you feel the sound more than you hear it. But still, he spun for an hour, and if you're into DJs, DJ Crush is awesome.
Yeah,
he's very good. Of course, Tom doesn't like him because Tom doesn't like good music. Ooh,
Ross, why is this always about me and how uncool I am? I have so admitted. And
I'm sorry. You do like Henry Rollins, so you're.
And okay. I have so admitted, and by God, my letter will prove today, I am not cool.
Okay. I'm just being a jerk.
Yes, you are.
I know.
And God bless you too.
That's how I roll. Anyways, we also have a new feature on the site. If you look on the sidebar, we have recent comments, so you can see what other people have been saying about other posts.
Because it turns out not all the newest comments are on the newest thing we have up.
Right. We just got a guy from Sydney, Australia, who really liked it. I'm actually... we really liked the Call of Cthulhu End of the World scenario. Yeah. And actually, I've been really surprised at how positive the response has been to the actual play sessions. I mean, honestly, the reason I started doing them was because that they were easy to do. I was running games, I was like...
And just turn on a recorder.
Yeah, exactly. Got an omnidirectional mic and it's like, hey, great, let's just start recording and throw it up there. And people are like, oh, this is great, this is awesome. I was like, all right.
Say omnidirectional mic again.
Omnidirectional.
That's awesome.
Omnidirectional.
That's right.
A Sound Grabber 2 mic, if you really care. I'm sure you don't.
He didn't get paid for that endorsement. That was from the heart endorsement.
All right. Lastly, a bit of new business. We are upgrading to WordPress 2.5. I'm going to be upgrading before I upload this episode, so you should see there's so many features I don't even remember. There's like new avatar systems, so you can set up a little thing, so you have your little picture when you post a comment.
You will shit your pants.
Yeah, there's all kinds of neat stuff. So hopefully it won't break and cripple the site, and it'll just be peachy. So anyways, so why don't we start talking about the actual topic?
The thing we mentioned an hour ago.
Well, 5 minutes ago, but 6 minutes ago. Something like that. Time
keeps on ticking into
the future. Making everything old new again. Tom, you came up with the idea for this episode.
Yeah. So, of course, I think we were all sitting around fishing for ideas after watching the Beowulf riff tracks.
Oh, God.
That's another story. Trust me. But and just sitting around thinking of things that are important to me about gaming, and it reminds me that I have been in many situations running games and playing in games where most of the players sitting around the table were so intimately familiar with everything about that game, from the stats of all the enemies to the adventures they list to how to work all the rules so they can create characters that cannot be killed by mortal weapons alone. And that can be a problem, especially when you have people that aren't familiar with it.
Right. The classic example being obviously the player. Well, it's the source book that you're running the adventure from. So he's already read the adventure and says, okay, let's go to the cathedral, ring the bell, get the hidden key in the alcove, and then run down to the cellar, unlock the door, and, say abracadabra 3 times. We win. All right.
And you're saying I didn't even mention there was a cathedral yet, but okay.
Yeah.
Why don't you just go roll some dice, and I'm going to go in the bathroom and cry.
Has that happened to you, Tom? Is that...
just giving up, screaming, just roll the dice and, doing that, no. But going into the bathroom and crying afterward, that has happened before.
All right. So the question is, how do you keep the everything old new again? How do you keep it fresh when you don't want to switch systems? I mean, it's not like there aren't a plethora of new games out there. I mean...
Yeah, they're all over.
Like Monsters and Other Childish Things, which is coming out soon.
Yes, that Ross wrote for. Let no one forget that.
Anyways, but I mean, once you picked a system, once you picked, everything, how do you, another example would be, the Zeppelin adventure. I know we've mentioned it before, but I knew what a star vampire was.
And I think everyone in the game did.
Well, did you?
Yeah, I knew it was a star vampire. Okay. I mean, I'm not as familiar, but I do usually when I'm bored in a game, pick up a book, and when you're running Call of Cthulhu, when I get bored, has happened before, I'll reach for the nearest book near me, which often happens to be the source book of the game we're doing right now.
Right.
And the monster section is what most interests me.
Right. So the first thing is obviously for players is don't be a dick about it. Don't show off your knowledge. Try and maintain
at the very
character.
least, don't the moment you're like, oh god, are you actually throwing a star vampire? It's that. Oh great. Ooh, let's fight the blood drinking star thing.
Yeah. I mean, let's start carving elder signs on our skin. Blah blah blah. Form a perimeter.
Well, let's be honest, Ross. If you start Call of Cthulhu, you've done that to begin with.
Assuming you know how to make an elder sign, that's the problem.
Who doesn't?
Well, most investigators actually,
start.
After
the first session, they know everything.
True, because they've read all the diaries of the previous dead characters, which have all the spells and all the knowledge and all.
Which strikes me as if they've read the journals of all the doomed characters, why don't more investigator just say, "Fuck this shit" and go open a garage in Sandusky, Ohio, or something?
Yeah. That's a good question because the player running him is a jerk like that.
Yeah, he is. Like he has no respect for make believe characters
or their make believe wives and families and
dogs,
soon to be widows. Yeah. Anyways, the first thing as a player is obviously you have some, like we said, be polite about it. And in fact, it's kind of interesting to be playing in an adventure where you know what's happening, and then to try. The challenge to you is to maintain your stay in character,
yeah.
I know what's happening, but my character doesn't know what's happening, so I'm going to do the thing that's going to be the most, especially in Call of Cthulhu in certain scenarios where, it's going to be in badly, but you're going to do it anyway because you want to see what happens. So...
Right. More the often just see, like, can I go an entire gaming session without using the knowledge I have inside my head? And often it becomes a test of fortitude and willpower to just sit there, not using your metagame knowledge, just
right.
And you're actually proud of yourself at the end when you pull it off.
That's true.
That I did not use the knowledge I have in my head. I did not metagame, and I got through the damn game. Now I'm going to go in the bathroom and cry.
This is going to be a reoccurring thing, isn't it?
For this session,
okay.
I dare not go further into other episodes because, dude, that's just crap.
So, basically, just try and enjoy the ride, even if you know the ending. I mean, people watch the same movie over and over again, in order to get. You watched Terminator 2 how many times?
At the theater alone, 28.
Yeah, so after the first time, you knew what was going to happen, but you still had a good time because
it's one of those movies that touched me here.
Right, so an RPG can be the same thing. You know how it's going to wind up, but enjoying the ride with a different character or approaching it differently is interesting because there's so many variables in a game that even the same scenario can turn out radically differently depending on... who's playing and what they do.
Well, I mean, yeah, but of course, never mind the same, published adventures, but often just a player that has intimate knowledge of the system alone can cause problems too.
Well, yeah, and again, you don't want to, unless your entire group is into the whole rules lawyering, tactical, resource management, combat.
Well, and I only did that. I only did that one time.
Well, yeah, for the Epic game.
For what?
Well, you mean for the Epic game?
No, actually, I was thinking. I forget which game it was, but it's one of the classes in the old Masters of the Wild 3.0.
Oh, the Shifter.
Yeah, the Shifter class, which basically...
I thought that's what you did for the Epic.
No.
Okay. Anyways.
No, the Epic game I did that Kobold Sorcerer.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Anyways.
No, but the Shifter class can basically... The old one can become any creature that you have enough hit you have equal hit dice to, of basically anything from undead to outsiders to anything. And it's the ultimate... fuck you to whatever you're fighting, because whatever you're fighting, if you know enough about the monster manual, it'll just become the creature that can most counter it.
Right.
Like you threw a huge stone golem at us at one point, and I just became a delver.
Okay.
And,
spit acid
and liquefied it.
Oh, wait, that's what delver does, doesn't it? Or no, I'm thinking
it secretes the
anyways,
stuff that corrodes earth.
So yeah, again, you just... And there can be you can have fun doing that, but just make sure everyone is on board for that. But the main thing, obviously, to keep everything new, everything old new, is the challenge of the GM. Obviously,
yeah, like so many things.
So the thing is, the way I see it, the GM has to figure out what the audience really wants, and to deliver that. And I've said this before, but I think it bears repeating. Like last night, I beat Gears of War because I just got a 360, and
he beat it with as much excitement as he's telling right now.
It's a fun game, but I mean, to me, honestly, the mini games and the gimmicks in some of the sections were. But I mean, this is sort of a tangent. When I read the manual, didn't. The head developer said, "Oh, we wanted to make a game that had made you feel like you were in a real firefight, and to that end, we had this cover system where you can duck behind cover, roll around, go from hiding spot to hiding spot, shoot around corners, things like that, to make it feel more like not the circle strafing, rocket jumping Quake model of first person shooters." And so that's what video games, what for shooters, really focus on is, those technical elements. That's what the genre is really about. You don't go to it for stories, because the people who play the games don't really care about stories. They just want something that's kind of shiny and explodey, but they really want the features, the gameplay and the graphics and the sound. So, anyways, like, to go another even more convoluted example, look at medieval art. The subject matter was pretty much set. It was religion and the aristocracy. You paint, but it was how you painted. Leonardo da Vinci, not a medieval painter, but Renaissance. The Mona Lisa is famous in part because of how he captured the technical details, the atmospheric distortion of the background. How it gets hazy on a certain, because of the air and everything else. So it's the technical things. That's what they were interested in, not so much. I mean, they were interested in the subject matter, but that wasn't the main thing. And so in role-playing games, you have to think of what is the main thing that players are interested in. What are you interested in? Is it the subject matter? Is it the adventure that you've been doing again? The same type of adventure.
Like, do you have a bunch of combat monkeys? Do you have a bunch of role-playing monkeys?
Right.
Well, what kind of monkeys do you have in your group?
Right. So what you want to do is set it up so that you can create new and different things from that technical level, just ignoring for a while the overall subject, the story, the narrative, and focusing on these challenges, these conflicts, and what they are, how they defeat them, and things like that.
Yeah, I think Mutants and Mastermind is still one of my favorite examples. That there's really no way to create a character that can stop any threat.
Yeah, you have to, niche protection. You have to be part of a team. Like the old D&D models, you had to have a fighter, to fight the things, a wizard to block, or a wizard to blow stuff up, a cleric to heal, and a thief to find traps.
And tanks.
Right. Well, fighters. Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, this model's been carried over to MMORPGs. The same tanking, buffing, healing.
Although with prestige classes, a lot of that line often starts to blur in D&D now.
Right. And, well, 4th Ed will have sort of the same thing. The class roles are more clearly defined is what the...
But I'm running a Mutants and Masterminds game now, and it's great because I have players, like, they have yet to find a particular niche, but they find that there's none of the villains I throw at them, one can take on entirely.
I mean, the main thing is, don't feel bad because you're running, the same type of adventure or using an old adventure or material. You can't make everything new at once. You focus on one or two things that are going to be different, and the players will remember those things. They'll remember the new, the unusual.
Yeah. Or take a monster in the case and change a couple of things around with it.
Right. I mean, that's just one example, but if you offer them a new type of experience using the same kind of material, I think the players will be really rewarded. For example, in combat, like the old D&D model, especially in D20, was you get out of grid. I march up to you, you march up to me. We trade attacks with each other until one of us runs out of hit points. That kind of, sucks. But then we played Iron Heroes, where it was the same. It was sort of a Conan thing and no magic, but what they emphasized was cinematic combats through stunting, through making the battlefield interactive. And
that's most of the players I play with. They like the ones they don't want any of the. Okay, you attack for this much damage. They want as little of that as possible. They want to know, like, okay, my sword's going to go down right to his arm, and I'm going to try to sever his arm.
Right. It's more narrative.
That's what they want to do.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same. I mean, it's a similar type of fantasy, more sword and sorcery, which is sort of the Conan Robert E. Howard model rather than the D&D model. There are slight differences, but they're very similar. But through focusing on these combat, through these technical measures, that the game offered a substantially different game. I ran a 4-month campaign in Iron Heroes, and everyone loved it. And all it was is, you're in a kingdom, you find a new kingdom, you're sent out to explore it. Go do whatever you want. It was basically, open-end sandbox type game. And they were just traveling on the road to get to the main capital city, and they got involved in all this stuff, and they had all these fights, and I let them do whatever they wanted. I mean, I had consequences. If they attacked superior enemy, they would get their butts kicked. But they had the freedom to do what they wanted, and that was enough, even though it was still sort of hack and slash fantasy, D&D, D20 type stuff. So that's what you should look for, I think, is, only focus on trying to innovate in one or two areas and do that really well. If you try to make everything new at once, it can really fall apart.
I mean, yeah, some sameness is good. Well, familiar. I think familiar.
Right. You have to think of the ramifications of trying to change things up too much. For example, if you try and change a published adventure up, you have to be careful not to turn it into basically mush. If you change the motives and everything in those adventures are pre-planned, it's pre-written, and the author usually has a good idea of where to put things and for what reason.
Actually, most adventures do encourage you to change things as you see fit.
Right. But they're play tested, which means other groups have gone through them and sort of, given them a shakedown to make sure that they're playable. And so if you change things just for no reason, just for the sake of changing them, then you could say, oh, wait, I didn't give you the plot item that you needed to, complete this scenario.
And of course, you always run the risk of just having the one asshole player that's done this and say, wait a minute, it's like, why? Wait! Why didn't we go here? Or why wasn't this enemy?
I said abracadabra 3 times. Why isn't the ghost, banished? Yeah, something like that. But if you're playing with jerks like that, they're just.
Well, that's probably best just to figure that out right away that they are jerks. And
yeah. So, keep in mind that you don't want to change everything, at once. Figure out what you want to change and why, and figure out what the ramifications are. Another thing is if you change everything, you create.
Well, you've basically just done something, another thing all your entire
life. And players like me. I don't know about you, Tom, but I love new games. I love reading about new games, but my biggest hesitation in running them is, especially for games that have very exotic settings, backgrounds, is that there's just too much information for me to really understand it. I got this game used, Tribe 8, and it was made in the late 90s, and it's a darling of RPG.net. A lot of people have just written, oh my god, it's a great game. And I've just tried to read the book, and it's just, everything's new. It's just post-apocalyptic fantasy, and it's just, there's just too much material to really get into. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no. I have several systems at my place that are the same way. Just everything's so innovative, and you've never seen this before. And I'm wondering how to do it.
I mean, another example like Exalted. I mean, Exalted is another darling of RPG.
I tried to run a game with that one time.
Yeah,
and
there's a charm system. There's a new, entirely new setting. There's all these different, and
there's a power, and there's like 600 million different powers you have to worry about.
So it takes a long time to invest in order to really understand the game. I mean, you have to read the book to learn the backstory. You have to read the rules, and
that's almost a game that players need some familiarity with it.
Yeah,
I mean, and I ran it like they didn't know anything about it, and it struggled because of that.
I'm not saying it's a bad game or anything.
No, I'm not.
I don't know.
I think if I'd love to be in a successful game of that. It's a cool idea, a cool setting.
Yeah,
but it takes a lot of pre-preparation to make it work.
And I just don't want to invest that much time in a game that I don't know my players are really going to like. Iron Heroes, there's basically no setting, except generic D&D world, sort of. So I could throw them at anything. So once the players figured out the rules, they're like, all right, we'll just do this. And they liked it. Call of Cthulhu. It's the modern day world, but with monsters.
Or in the 1920s world with monsters.
Yeah, so that's pretty easy to get into. And you just don't have unlimited time to experiment and try new things. So that's sort of the downside of trying to make everything too new, too different, is that, it's just a lot of wasted time and effort with no real fun out of it.
Yeah.
So, it's up to you. We can't figure this out for you. You just have to figure out it for yourself, what really works and what doesn't work.
With your individual groups, you have to...
But I do recommend that you keep trying new things. One or two, like I said, I think the key thing is to focus on like 1 to 3 elements that are really new or different in your game each session. Like for example, the Call of Cthulhu scenario I ran, the end of the world, the difference was it was the same sort of apocalyptic scenario that we've all been into.
But we weren't the heroic adventurers. We were the authorities.
Right. You were the guys in control. So that was putting really different twist on it. And plus, there were NPC adventurers who are generic, cliched.
Who I was very quick to trust.
Which was a little out of character, but
metagaming.
Yeah, so that was kind of annoying, but still, that was a fun scenario, and the players really dug it, and it's gotten really comment, and that's just by changing one real big element. Everything else was pretty much by the numbers Cthulhu Apocalypse. I mean,
and I do admit, if I was to play a real authority figure in a serious disaster like that, I would have banished them from my site. And
yeah, I think probably what I would have done next time is make it sound like a natural disaster at first. Like a tornado or an earthquake.
You kind of drop the supernatural really quick.
Yeah, of course, nothing's perfect, but I think we all still had fun. And plus, everyone knew it was a Call of Cthulhu adventure. So, again, metagaming on my part.
Yeah.
So.
And people like it, like when we do that.
Yeah. So, just to sort of summarize, let me just give us some suggestions on what you can change, like some different elements. Again, one would be what we just talked about, putting the PCs in a different role. Like, instead of making them the standard role for a PC is sort of the
lone wolf adventure or the close knit team.
Right. The A team or the lone wolf, basically. Where there are these young, highly skilled professionals with no roots that are highly
young
mobile.
Yet grizzled.
Right. That can take on all kinds of these problems. So put them in a different position. Make them either very weak, like a peasant. Give them lots of connections. Say, like, everyone has their family in a certain place, and they have a day job. Or make them, the authority figures. That's one suggestion.
One, of course, obviously, is the setting.
Right, the setting. Change something about the setting that is different. For example, Call of Cthulhu, but put it on a sci-fi setting, such as, a Mars colony.
Ghosts of Mars kind of shit.
Right, something like that. There actually are a couple of Call of Cthulhu in-time scenarios set in sci-fi worlds. So,
or go way back, like ancient Rome or something.
Right, again, there is some published material, but it's very rare, and it's certainly not what people think of. Or, say, a D&D game, but like in Victorian England, which there was a D&D scenario, like some of the Ravenloft material, Mask of the Red Death, or even a modern-day D&D. There's X-Crawl, which is a different setting, making it like a professional sport, dungeon crawling. And so that's good. That's a setting. NPCs. Change something about the NPCs that make them different. For example, make the antagonist unkillable in some way so that he cannot be defeated through sheer violence, i.e. make him a political rival that the players, if he dies, his followers, his party wins somehow, or he's immortal or unkillable, or he's, one of the PC's allies in a sense, keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer.
Yeah.
So.
Or if he dies, one of the players dies at the same time.
Right,
and you don't know which one.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Or you don't know who your enemy. Well, of course, that's sort of a standard thing, is the mystery. But those are just a few suggestions. Another thing is to focus on the type of challenges your players love, and make it really different. For example, Iron Heroes, they focus on making combat different by making the battlefield part of it. So instead of just
grid map.
Yeah, instead of just a dungeon crawl, this underground base, there are chandeliers overhead that you can swing from. There are these drapes you can set on fire and, cut the holdings so they fall on enemies. There are pits of acid you can knock enemies into.
The tavern has a bunch of liquor, booze and ale that's highly flammable.
Right. Movable things, put it on a stagecoach or something like that so that the players have to deal with a chase.
Or ship in a storm or something.
Right. Things like that. Or, social things. Make it more, depending on what your players want. Like if the players are really into relationships, like everyone's connected to someone else through rivalry, friendships, romance, something like that. Have one of them go into amnesia or have one of their identities change. Flip the relationships. They say the difference between a drama and a melodrama is that in both there's a victim, a hero, and an antagonist. Now, in a melodrama, those roles stay the same. The hero stays the hero, the victim stays the victim, the antagonist stays the antagonist. In a drama, the roles change So the hero becomes a victim, or the hero becomes the antagonist. The victim becomes the hero, or the victim becomes, there's this shifting of roles. So think about that. Try, change your game from a melodrama to a drama. Make the villain the hero. Make him save the world, when the PCs are really the ones who are going to destroy everything. So anyways, these are just a few ideas. And again, just focus on one or two at a time, so the players are really going to focus on one or two of these things at a time. They're not going to remember everything you do. That's awesome. So
they all have ADD anyway.
Yeah, players have very selective memories. I mean, I don't know how many times in a game where I do something I think is cool, the player's like, yeah, whatever. And then something I kind of half-ass do, players go, oh, that rocks. Like in the Rain game, Fantasy, I did this speech from this Elven Queen talking about how the world is going to end, how the undead elves are going to fuck everyone's shit up if anyone messes with their tomb. You remember that, right?
I remember. I was in it.
And everyone's like, "Oh man, you really role played that well." And all I was doing is like, "You guys, you
shall perish."
Yeah, the universe shall be torn asunder. I was just doing a basic thing, and they loved that. And I was like, "All right, that's cool." And some of the things I thought that they would think that were cool, they just ignored. So,
oh, okay, well,
yeah, exactly. So, this is hopefully enough to get you started on changing things up, keeping old things new again. So, do you have any other words you want to say about it, Tom?
Yeah, I think that just about covers it. I mean, obviously, it's up to the players and GMs themselves to figure out what needs to be done.
Right. But again, now that we have our brand new email address, feel free to send us any questions or comments. If you have a problem with your campaign, we'd...
or if you had brilliant solutions to problems like that.
Right. Yeah. Any stories on this?
We are, unlike a lot of people, we are interested in how awesome you are.
Now, that's kind of an implied insult to the other podcasts out there, Tom.
I don't know about that, Ross, but if you insist on saying it that way, I'll go along with it.
Okay. Anyways, we have a promo from another gaming podcast, and then when we're back, we will have a letter from Thomas.
Indeed.
Right.
Do you find yourself wondering how to keep it all straight with all those great RPG podcasts out there on the internet? Like a flaming, dancing Vorpal +5 holy avenger of awesome. Check out rpgpodcast.com.
We all have gaming experiences that we would like to dig into our skulls with a Black & Decker power drill and remove with all the restraint of Rosie O'Donnell at feeding time. I'm talking about the time when the young couple playing Thargor the Blackguard and Tinkersnoodle the Pixie Barbarian bought a copy of the Kama Sutra the night before and were trying out some of the foreplay activities during the game. Or when the GM bought the anniversary edition of Scarface, and for the next 5 hours of gameplay, your superhero team was taking on an invincible Cuban drug lord with an assault rifle grenade launcher combo that could knock the Starship Enterprise out of orbit. Well, I have my own. The gaming experience I want to scrape out of my brain with a melon baller is online games. Not online video games, don't get me wrong. Most of those are fun as hell. No, I am talking about internet RPGs run via email or instant messaging. I only have one under my belt, but that one is sufficient to last me a lifetime. It took place back in 1994, and I was an eager 14-year-old looking for some RPG action, because I was God's gift to gamers. The one I happened to find was based off the old SWAT Cats cartoon. I was young, stupid, and a huge fan of the show, so of course I dove in like the Ritalin junkie that I was. I based my character off the Christopher Walken drug lord from King of New York. While all the other giggling children in-game were flying their jet fighters or using their evil supervillain powers to take over and/or destroy Mega Cat City, I slowly built a drug empire, making sure to pull off every cool scene Walken did in the movie, including my own personal favorite of having a conversation with other underworld types while using a .45 pistol as an emphasis maker. It was a lot of fun up until the game stopped after 2 months because the moderator's attention span finally reached its limit and veered off to places in anime unknown. It remained in my head for a couple of years as a great experience until my brain matured ever so slightly, and I realized how unbelievably lame the whole thing had been. That very night I rushed home, brushed my teeth like I had swallowed the SWAT Cat's ejaculate, and listened to Slayer for 3 hours straight to try to ease the nerd from my soul. Too late, I came to the conclusion that it was impossible. Why? Because I am a nerd, and I still have a soft spot in my heart for that goddamn cartoon. Why do I have so much bile for online games? Quite simply, it's because they can still lure me in. As bad as it was in that game of long ago, I still got compliments from the other players. The two guys running the actual SWAT Cats commended me on playing a villain that wasn't trying to take over the city with ridiculous super science shit.
It made me feel so superior to the rest of the unwashed peasants who traipse through the game like trying to find glory and kudos like a pig sniffing along looking for truffles. Yes, I was the best out of all of them, much like being valedictorian in summer school. And worst of all, online games still have the power to suck me in. Since the horrible SWAT Cat summer of 1994, no fewer than 5 other online games have sung their siren song, and I have followed along like a retarded puppy. Thankfully, none of the games ever happened, and I was spared. And after each lucky break, I would lock myself in my room and flagellate myself in rage as I punished my body for sinning so badly. And just so you know how powerful the singularity-like pull of online games is to me, the last one I almost joined was based off the Land Before Time series. By admitting that, I know that any chance of scoring with a hot chick just became as likely as George W. Bush getting hit with a beam of cosmic energy from space and receiving the power to spew freedom dust from his Kevlar-laced fairy wings. Sorry, lost my train of thought there. In summation, to all of those who are now judging me, I say this. At least I have the balls to admit it. I'd like to see you admit to the world how often you whacked off to the Land Before Time. Pick your own favorite character. I have my own.
Ah, welcome. Come on in, please. Have a seat, warm yourself by the fire, and listen to the friendly minstrel's song. What? You've come seeking the tome? Well, you are in luck. I am the keeper of the tome. And what would you do with this mighty podcast? Oh, good. You have the right idea. You see, the tome is a source for expanding your understanding of Dungeons & Dragons and what various books have to offer. The tome's knowledge is endless when it comes to Dungeons & Dragons. So sit, listen, and become a sage of great renown. The Tome is a Dungeons & Dragons review podcast focused on official content. You can find the Tome at http://thetome.podbean.com or search for the Tome on iTunes.
And we're back. That was a very interesting letter there, Tom. You feel all right? Can I get you anything? You feel you're
interesting. That this strikes me as the kind of interesting that has quotation marks around it.
Well, I'm sure it'll get a good response from our listeners.
Well, that's the whole idea. I need attention, so and I'm willing to admit embarrassing things about myself to do it.
Well, it's the age of the internet. I think everyone does. So,
and it's 14 years ago, so I'm sure that maybe you could think more of me since then.
Yeah, that's true. Anyways, of course, now we have our shout-outs. First off, I'd like to give one to VikingFighting.com because it's a Viking martial art school in Scandinavia where they have tactical Warhammer classes. And their Grandmaster proudly announces that he teaches dirty fighting and teaming up on people with your friends to beat the crap out of them. And it's about cheating and low fighting and getting a bunch of your friends to beat the crap out of people.
I really can't comment. What more needs to be said about it?
It defies. It's Viking fighting. I mean,
one cannot be told what Viking fighting is.
Yeah,
you'll have to see it for yourself.
So it gave me a smile on my face.
So go clicky on the link to it.
Anyways, next one is a webcomic, one that I found recently called The Abominable Charles Christopher. It's a really great little webcomic about a Yeti who wanders around a forest, and all the animals there are they talk, but they still look like animals. The art is beautiful. I mean, the sunsets, the landscape, the animals just look totally realistic. I mean, it's like Audubon Society artwork. I mean, it's professional artwork. Brilliant characterization. I mean, he just does one little strip a week, but it's only been going on for I think a year now, so there's not too much to catch up on, but it's just so worth reading. Just put it in your RSS feed and subscribe to it. I cannot recommend this enough. This is one of the better webcomics I've seen on the internet and ever.
One of those things that makes Ross smile.
Yeah, it's funny and it's just great. I mean, it really shows each of these animals is just like a little character. I mean, a few panels he really characterizes them, and there's great humor. There's good storytelling. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this comic. I mean, you can't really point to any significant flaws in it. So I think that's one of the strongest compliments give any comic is that there's nothing really wrong with it. I mean, it's just great. So,
okay.
Anyways, those are my shout-outs. How about you, Tom?
I got one, actually, that's a request.
Speaking of flaws.
Yes, I actually have a request from the very person who shares the Henry Rollins picture with me.
Oh, Aaron.
Yep, Aaron. Aaron C., we'll call him.
Okay. I forgot his last name, so
That's
I can't even
fine.
spoil it for you. So.
But anyway, Aaron requested on numerous occasions before that I mention in our shout-outs the webcomic Sluggy Freelance.
Ooh, that takes me back.
It does. And he, of course, is one of the actual paying official members. I think it's the followers of the Nifty or something.
There's a paying membership now?
Well, it's like a one-time payment.
One-time payment.
It's like the premium shit. I don't know exactly what it is. I didn't ask too many questions.
Okay.
And he has one of the books, the tomes, the mega tomes, and I've read through it. Yeah, some of them are kind of funny. I like a couple of the characters, and a couple of the storylines are somewhat.
You don't have to apologize. Just be honest with you.
I am being honest.
Okay.
And but he requested that please just mention. Actually, he wanted to come in and mention. I said we'll think about that. But
he's not worthy to talk on the microphone.
So anyway, I said okay. So here I am shouting out to Sluggy Freelance for him. Do you have anything to say about it, Ross?
Yes, I do. I'm glad you asked about that, Tom. It's Sluggy Freelance is a very bad comic. I used to read it myself back around 1999, 2000. And let's see here. It had a little bunny bun that was totally unstoppable. A Mary Sue character, which we mentioned before. I forgot. There's like a Torg and a Riff and two chicks. I forgot their names.
Zoe and something.
Yeah, Zoe and the one guy, the blonde-headed guy, is like, I want to be with her, but I can't.
And an alien.
Yeah, and 9 years later, or however many years, 8 years later, they still haven't gotten together. The storyline really hasn't changed that much. The characters are incredibly static, two-dimensional. The art hasn't improved in 8 years. I mean, think about 8 years of drawing this comic on average once every day or a few days, and the artwork really hasn't improved. The storyline is unbelievably convoluted. I mean, in order to understand what's going on, you'd have to read all, 8-10 years of backstory to really get it. The storylines themselves are stupid, talking about how Santa Claus is trying to take over the world and the gnomes are trying to get Bun, and there's this alien crap, and there's just vampires. I mean, there's just so much stupid crap in it. It's just not fun to read anymore. I mean, it hasn't been fun to read since like 2000, 2001. And he doesn't care about improving the art. He just has this incredibly devoted fan base that will buy anything he does. And I mean, it's not viciously bad like Control-Alt-Delete. Control-Alt-Delete is horribly, viciously bad because they over-explain each joke in it, and it's like the Garfield of gaming webcomics. It's like Garfield is even better than Control-Alt-Delete.
Tastes like Mondays.
Yeah, exactly. And Sluggy Freelance is like the Mary Worth of webcomics because it's got backstories with and it's melodrama with no real humor, and it's just stale. It's static. It's not improving. It's not getting any better. And there's so much. I mean, back in 2000 when there weren't any good webcomics or very few webcomics, you had like Penny Arcade or User Friendly and Sluggy, and that was it. Then yeah, I could see that. But come on, we've got better webcomics now, like Abominable Charles Christopher. We got Minus. We have Gunner Green Court. We have so many Dr. McNinja. There's so many good ones. Achewood. Achewood.
Ross, you're kind of starting to foam at the mouth here.
Perry Bible Fellowship. I mean, am I alone in here? I mean, there's good comics now. There are legitimately good comics.
Okay, Ross.
Jesus.
Are we okay?
It's just Why?
Do you
It's
need
just
something
so
to drink?
it's not even, bad. It's just mediocre. It's just blasé.
Well, I did his
Too many
favor.
words too. Look, if you look at an average comic, there's too many words on each page, on each strip. It's like word bubble taking up 2/3 of the goddamn panel. I mean, come on. It's a comic. It's not a novel. Say less.
Ross.
Draw more.
Ross.
Draw better.
Ross.
Yes.
Sweeney. Pixie dust. Pixie dust.
God. All right.
Anyway, so
I got that out of
Aaron,
my system.
Aaron, there you go.
If you're a Sluggy freelance fan, that's fine. There's no accounting for taste. I'm not insulting you, or it's just not a good comic. It's just by any standards you can objectively measure art or sequential art comics. It just doesn't really measure up.
It's not the Yui Bowl of comics.
Uvable.
Oh, is it Uva?
Yeah.
Whatever. I like Yui better, but whatever.
Uvable. No, that would be Control Alt Delete.
So, okay. Fuck Control Alt Delete. There we go.
There we go. Yeah, and then we have one last thing, anecdote from Ethan Daw.
Ethan Daw.
Yeah. Anyways, Ethan, of course, wants to talk to one of our longtime fans, talking about his current campaign, a D&D 3.5 game. Said he met him up through meetup.com, and he was using some of the advice about ad-libbing that we talked about earlier. So this is sort of his recollections of his ad-libbing a game. They started off with third-level characters, and he basically ad-libbed he's been ad-libbing most of the way. Like the first session, he included a piece of magical parchment and ink in a treasure because he had nothing else ready, and it sounded neat. That sounds neat. So after he finished the adventure, he had to come up with some reason for it. So what he did is the Church of Palor often used a means of sending secret messages by using this type of parchment, ink, and a secret process to encode and decode letters. Oh, a plot hook, you say. This parchment turned out to be a letter and a map from the high priest of the ruined temple they had just explored, who left it as the last confession of a past wrong he did, leaving his friends to die on an adventure in the mountains far to the north. He begged for someone to seek it out and lay them to rest. Okay? But then he also laid out 5 other adventure hooks. Now, this is a good advice. I mean, that's very good. That's what I usually do in a D&D game, is I throw out, 3 or 5 or however many adventure hooks and see what you guys really bite at. That way, because I don't railroad you, you get to choose what you want to do, but then I have some idea, if I give you 3 to 5 choices, that's enough.
To go after the Orc tribes, turn to page 23. To go after the Knoll tribes, turn to page 48.
If you're a jerk and a coward, keep your page on the thumbs and then just see what happens.
Indeed.
Yeah. So
choose your own adventure books.
Yes. I saw a good website with a flowchart showing all the different choices you can make in one of them. It's pretty neat.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Very nerdy.
Wow. Wow.
Well, anyways, Ethan decided they wanted to follow the map, but also decided to check out another hook on the way. The adventure took them to a wizard's tower where they battled a wizard who I decided was going to escape and be a reoccurring villain. I structured this plan for a specific goal, and it went fine. He escaped, and it seemed reasonable. In the meantime, they are asked by a rescued hostage of the wizard to escort her to the capital city of the nearby state, whereas she was on this diplomatic mission to see the Duke there. They make the trip after stopping back at their base city, encountering some backstory skullduggery involving the Baron being assassinated along the way. Some suspicion points to their traveling companion, but it's very, very vague. Once they see her safely, they're going up the mountain as planned. Nope. They want to meet the Duke. They decide that they are going to the mountains, or that's what he thinks. But Ethan says, oh no, they want to meet the Duke now. All right, the NPC tries to put them off, but they are insistent. Now I'm really in ad-lib land because he had not planned to have them meet the Duke. I had planned on the Duke being assassinated too, and this being the backdrop for something going on. Since the PCs are so insistent, I let the story roll. So they're in the action result. So the end result is the Duke not get killed. So he's not really clear if whether the PCs saved the Duke or he just decided not to have him assassinated at all. But either way, it shows you have to go with the flow. The PC say, I want to go meet that goddamn Duke. And then, all right, well, you'll meet the Duke. And he has a real name that I can make up.
Indeed.
Duke Bob.
Duke Nukem.
There you go.
It had to be said.
I also decided that they were going to run into the wizard again in the capital city, as he could have arrived there quicker due to routes and carts and time, blah, 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 blah. I figure up a reason for him to come there, and also want the PCs to keep having this guy crop up. Reoccurring villain. This is dangerous route. They were bummed that he got away the first time, so when they see him in the streets and follow him, I figure we'll have another fight and they'll be left really wanting him dead. Not only do I roll a 1 on his initiative, but they get the drop on him so bad with Tanglefoot bags and teamwork that even though I could have flubbed it, I decided that he had to die. They had him. Having him get away would have been stretching believability too much. I tried my best to get him out of it, but it wasn't going to happen. One great thing for ad-libbing is a list of good names for NPCs. If you don't have a character sheets or stats, names go a long way. I recommend keeping good records. That's true. He also he decided to put up his notes on his website. So if you're interested in Ethan's campaign, you can check out the link that we'll have up on this post. But yeah, a list of names goes a long ways. Like typically before, like when everybody's sitting down getting ready to start a game, I'd just take a notebook out and write a couple of names out. And I don't know, like especially for fantasy games where you can't come up with the names. Modern day games, you just say,
Robert Johnson.
Yeah, give me a phone book. Sylvia Plath. That's
but
not
Seth
taken,
Soul
right?
Sunder Nightblood.
Yeah, Draven Magnum. Kill fuck soul shitter. Yeah, so you want to have those names ready to go, and he's right. That really helps. If you could say the peasant who suddenly becomes important, or the duke who suddenly becomes important, he is no longer just the duke. He is the Duke, Castiglione or whatever. So
Nukem.
You just you're really pushing that joke. You know what, Tom? I think you should go in the bathroom and cry.
Well, obviously, but that's after we're done here.
Okay. Anyway, so that's episode 12. Everything old is new again. So this is Ross Payton.
Tom Church here.
And we'll see you next time.
Laters.